Love that sound every time. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We are putting on a heavyweight fight tonight. On one side, we have the pro-vaccine Eric, and on the other side, we have the pro-choice on whether or not you should have to get the vaccine. Anthony, say hello, boys. Let everyone see.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, guys.
All right. So I guess we're just going to start it off, and we're going to ask you both basically for a quote opening statement, like lay out your position a little bit for us. You each get like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I go first. My position is pretty simple. I think the COVID vaccine is safe and effective, and there's pretty much no reason why someone shouldn't get it. If we want to talk about public policy, that's kind of like a different argument that we can get into. But I would say like for 99.9% of people, the vaccine's safe and effective, and you should get it, and there's no reason not to.
Okay. Anthony, what is your side?
All right. Hello, everybody. I will be championing the pro-choice side of this debate. And just because my side is pro-choice doesn't mean I am pro-vaccine. I have received the COVID vaccine myself, and I actually contracted COVID-19 after I got the vaccine. What I'm advocating for today is on 3 topics. Number 1 is that the pandemic has been used by politicians, mostly on the Democrat side, for political purposes. Number 2, the politicians, the ruling class, and the media use the pandemic to infringe on our God-given rights. And the third is, which I'll get into later in the show, is how Silicon Valley censors opinions on COVID-19 does not like. So first, I'll start with what happened last Thanksgiving. We had politicians and government bureaucrats who told the regular people that they should stay home for Thanksgiving. But meanwhile, they said, "Oh, yeah, you know what? You stay home, but I'm going to travel to my family's house in New Orleans, like the mayor of Denver did, and Delaware, where Deborah Birx went, spend time with their family." That's what I refer to as medical tyranny. And there are even some times where people don't want to get the vaccine because at the end of the day, it's something that you decide with your doctor. The government doesn't make that decision for you. Like for example, former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger said that, and I quote him, that there is a virus here. It kills people, and the only way we prevent it is you get vaccinated, wear a mask, do social distancing, washing your hands all the time, and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom. You have the freedom to wear no mask, but you know something? You're a schmuck for not wearing a mask because you're supposed to protect your fellow Americans around you. And that's the end of the quote. And when the whole point of when the pandemic is it's politicized to an extent where it harms our God-given rights, that's where we have a problem. Like I mentioned before, I made the choice to get the vaccine. It's a choice I made between me and my doctor. But at the same time, I respect those who have like religious exemptions, medical exemptions, or they just don't feel comfortable getting it because they haven't seen enough data.
Okay. So I guess we'll go to the first question. Christian actually suggested this question. He would like to know, what is your opinion on vaccines being mandated and why?
Yeah, I can take this one. I'll go first. So vaccines being mandated by the government, probably not a good idea, is a bad precedent to set. I have no problems with businesses saying, I won't hire someone who's not vaccinated, or I think a reasonable alternative to that would be not hiring someone who recently had COVID, because like, as we know, it's quite possible you have better immunity from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine. So I think it should be like equally substitutable. But yeah, I have no problem with a business saying they won't hire someone, but the government is a whole different story. I would not be okay with the government saying you have to get vaccinated. But I don't think that the government or that business is saying to get vaccinated or they won't hire you. I don't think that's an infringement on anyone's rights. I think that's well within the business's rights to do.
Anthony, go ahead.
Okay. Well, when it comes to mandating vaccines or these government mandates with COVID, they actually have been found in the courts to be unconstitutional. In not all states, but some states, they have been found to be unconstitutional. So, like when a business would say, "Oh, get the vaccine or you'll lose your job," like that's not right. I have the right to keep my job, And if I don't want to get the vaccine, then I'll just quit my job and find a new one. Because what if I still don't know about what's going on in the vaccine because I didn't do enough research, or I just don't feel comfortable getting it yet, or I'm allergic to something in the vaccine, like Aaron Rodgers was allergic to the RNA in the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine and that's why he didn't want to get vaccinated. Again, and at the end of the day, it's your choice whether you want to do it. But I would say for the people who did not receive the vaccine and the businesses implement like COVID policies, like if you're unvaccinated, then you have to test twice a day or twice a week, then I'm fine with that. Because it keeps actually make sure there's no outbreaks in the place of business. Because I mean, even people who are vaccinated, we should all treat them at least the same and not differently. But at the end of the day, there's a virus out there we have to defeat, and it starts with like doing what's best for yourself.
If I could respond real quick, I feel like the big hang-up we're going to have in this debate is like the freedom to not get the vaccine versus like the freedom to not live in a world with a pandemic. So I think that the stronger argument would be everyone gets the vaccine and we don't have to live in a pandemic. We're free from the pandemic rather than, oh, I'm free to not get the vaccine that's safe and effective.
Anthony, would you like to respond at all?
Sure. Well, when Eric has mentioned numerous times that the vaccine is safe and effective, there actually have been numerous times where people have either died from the vaccine or they had like numerous really really bad side effects from it, and they had to go to the hospital because of it, and that creates vaccine hesitancy. So for someone to say, "Oh, well, get the vaccine. You don't have a choice," fuck your freedom. So mind my language, though. It really doesn't really do any good to the American public on if they want to get the vaccine or not. They're just better off doing their own research, doing what's best for them. And I think this will probably be a theme with me tonight.
Okay, so moving on, I'd like to hear from both of you about what is the future of unvaccinated people. Is it going to end up like in New York where you have to show a vaccine card to get in stuff? Let's hear Anthony first this time.
Well, everyone who wants to get the vaccine has pretty much already gotten it already. Like you can't force those unvaccinated people to get the vaccine, and they don't want to get it. And like because all of a sudden now society is calling this pandemic a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is not a pandemic of the unvaccinated because like myself, I even said this earlier in the episode that people are still getting COVID after they got fully vaccinated, like myself. And like we mentioned before, Sean, about the New York City policies about the vaccine, proof of vaccination. I think that's a terrible idea. I do not want to go to any business, me personally, go to a business that has those type of policies. If I find out about that, I'll just walk right out. People don't need to know my vaccination status. It's another business, and that's pretty much that's the end of that.
Yeah, so I feel like in certain states the future is going to be like what New York did, but in a lot of states it's not going to be like that. But just to respond to what Anthony said about like the effectiveness of the vaccines, saying that they're not effective because people get COVID is just really dumb. That's like saying people still get into car accidents because like you wear a seatbelt. You wear a seatbelt so you don't get seriously hurt in a car accident. Yeah, people are still going to get seriously hurt, but you still wear a seatbelt every time because it protects you way more than not wearing a seatbelt.
Okay.
Can you get a roll for that, please?
Go ahead.
Sure. There's a quote that Benjamin Franklin once said, and the quote that he said was, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little more safety deserve neither liberty or safety." And what that quote means is that the people who want more safety but less liberty, you don't deserve any of it. And I think that's kind of from what you're coming from, Eric. Is that well, when you want safety, and safety should be a paramount for all Americans, freedom and liberty come number one.
And why are you not fighting against laws that require you to wear a seatbelt?
I didn't say anything about wearing a seatbelt. You did.
Yeah, but that's about safety. If Americans want safety, they think there should be a law on wearing seatbelts. Then do they not deserve safety?
As long as it doesn't infringe on your God-given rights.
Which God-given right is a vaccine mandate infringing on?
Good question. Well, I would say, the mandates have been found unconstitutional in the courts, and that's just your that it's the and as it's been said in the Supreme Court case in Ogden versus Gibbons that all rights that aren't delegated in the Constitution are delegated to the states, which is why there's a constitutional scholar who's even said that that the CDC and NIH should be abolished because they have too much power over people's lives. So how people need to make decisions for themselves.
Okay. Do you have anything else to say, Eric?
No.
Okay. So let me ask this to Anthony first, because I think it's more towards his side. Since the vaccine can be, quote, considered experimental and people are or are not sure about whether or not they want to get it, what is the scientific standard that should be in place for the vaccine to be considered like a normal FDA approved drug? Like, of course, there's going to be a little group that has side effects, but like, what's the scientific standard that we're looking for on this?
I think really what we're looking for is for a vaccine not to be rushed. Like obviously we've all received vaccines in this chat, but I think the ones who we received the most were shots. This is a vaccine, so this is a little different. But what I'm seeing, they're actually like when they started testing out the shots out on children, the vaccines out on children. I think one person from like the FDA said, "Oh, we don't know what the side effects are, but we'll just keep on putting these vaccines in the children and see what happens." That's not how science works. What science works is science is always ever changing. It's not always okay. This is the science, and we'll just have to stick with that for the next couple of years. Science is always changing, so I think when it comes to like for an effective vaccine, I'd say like, people like because the whole purpose of of people who got the vaccine were that way they won't get COVID again. But if people are still getting COVID after they got the vaccines, there's obviously like me, something needs to be done. So that obviously it just tells that it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. The vaccine isn't supposed to prevent COVID. It's supposed to prevent severe COVID. It's supposed to prevent people from being hospitalized or needing a ventilator. And I just want to say that is exactly how science works. You have a hypothesis and then you test it on the subjects, the subject in this case being children, because we haven't used it on children yet. We know it's safe in every other population. So now we're trying to expand it to children. So we're watching and studying to see the side effects of it.
But I would say that's not really the way we should go about it.
Well,
Test having the American people as guinea pigs. Like we're not guinea pigs. You're dealing with life or death situation.
I don't think that the COVID vaccine is a life or death situation. No one has died from getting the COVID vaccine.
People have died from it, which there are people who have died from the COVID vaccine. I see you shaking your head because you think I'm spreading misinformation, but actually
Yes.
you don't know what you're talking about. So I'm actually the one who would say that I've seen people I've watched on TV, people I've seen on I've done my research, and people have said that they that their relatives have died from the vaccine, and we'll see what happens in the future because we're going to 2022. It's still people that want to get vaccinated. This is still going to be a hot topic going to next year.
If the vaccine was killing people, don't you think you would have seen like mass death by now if over 1 billion people have gotten the vaccine?
Well, I mean, obviously a lot of people got the vaccine, and that is only if it wasn't really all effective. There are even videos of people, saying that, oh yeah, there was actually this is like an FDA or Pfizer advisor saying that the vaccine was full of shit. I mean, I don't personally think the vaccine's full of shit. I mean, I don't regret getting the vaccine, and the only thing that happened after me after the second dose was I felt a little overheated. I took an Advil, and I was fine after that. I'm not trying to advocate that the vaccines are not like fully are not like they don't work. I'm advocating for is that honestly, if people are still getting COVID after they got the vaccine, things just need to be fixed.
Yeah, but the vaccines are very effective in preventing people from dying or getting severe COVID.
And that's what people in the fake news say.
That's what the research says.
No, then show me the research then.
Okay. I'll send you links.
Oh yeah, fine. I want to see them now. I want to see them in this debate.
Okay. While you look that up, we'll circle back to it. I have another question. What is the opinion from both of you on mask mandates? Should they be up? Should they be down? How should it work?
I think Eric's research right now, so I'll take this one. Um, Again, I say if you want to wear a mask, go ahead and wear one. But I also believe that you have your own liberty to not wear a mask or if you have trouble breathing. Like, look, we have like adults who are not wearing masks anymore. But meanwhile, the little children in school, they still have to wear a mask, and there's no science that backs up the fact that children pass on COVID-19 to their fellow students and teachers. So I would say, we have to, get over this mask mandate stuff. It's not right, and tell people that if we don't wear a mask in our store, oh, then you're not allowed in here. I think that's pretty silly, and just to the point now in the pandemic where, like people really aren't wearing masks anymore. Like when I go out, I see like like 4 or 5 people wearing masks, or sometimes I see someone with a mask on when they're driving in a car all by themselves. Like that really is silly because COVID has been used as a fear tactic. So we've scared people so much into wearing masks when they're by themselves or in their homes by themselves. Like this is how like effed up things have become.
I don't disagree with that much. I feel like for the most part, we're vaccinated enough as a country where we don't need to be crazy about wearing masks. But if a business wants people to wear masks, I think you should just wear a mask. It's not really that big of a deal. But do I think it's dumb? Yeah, a little bit. But I'm vaccinated, so I don't care.
Or at least we found some common ground there.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to say. Harmony. So I see Eric has sent a link in the chat. Anthony, you can open that article and read it. And Eric, why don't you share your screen? Christian might have to give you permission to do that, but share your screen so you can put the article up real quick. Because I see you picked out a quote from it.
Please hold.
Yeah, that's from the conclusion. Basically, this is it. I can't share my screen, but I'll just say it's a study with 30,000 people who got the vaccine. It's a randomized control observer blind study. And its conclusion is that the mRNA vaccine showed 94.1% efficacy at preventing COVID-19 illness, including severe disease.
Okay, yeah, that's what I saw your quote right there. But like I said before, again, I'm not saying that the vaccine is ineffective or that because if the vaccine was ineffective, my COVID probably would have been pretty bad. But mine was pretty mild, and I was even told many times, I even said to myself, and my family members told me too that if I didn't get the vaccine, it probably would have been a whole lot worse. I probably would have been in bed for like days if I couldn't move. But I was well enough where I could drive when I had COVID. So, but yeah, I totally agree with this article too. I'm glad Eric you shared it.
Okay. I completely agree with everything you said. It would have been worse if you didn't get the vaccine. So
more common ground. Look at us. So my next question is obviously, Anthony, you don't have to answer this because yours will be pretty clear. Eric, do you think that people should have to get the booster?
No, because the booster. So the thing is, the booster is not even recommended for anyone anyone younger than 65 right now, or people who have close contact with like the medical field. So I don't think it should be required. I think that's kind of dumb because I was looking at long-term studies the other day, and it's still like 70% effective, like 6 months after you get it, which is good enough, and it still prevents severe COVID, which is like the goal of it. So if you get sick and you're only a little sick, that's not a big deal.
Looks like we're about Anthony. If you have anything to say about it.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we haven't really touched on in this debate is that once you get COVID, you can't get COVID again. COVID also has a 99.9% survival rate. So the big question comes to mind is, why are we getting a vaccine that has, why are we getting a vaccine when after we get this virus, we can't get it again? And it just raises a lot of eyebrows. I know some people have not gotten it because they rather get natural immunity instead of the vaccine. I would argue that if you get the vaccine and get COVID, you're double immune. So I would just say that works like that.
I think that's a fair point, to be honest. But what people don't consider with the 99.9% survival rate are the long-term effects of COVID. So the worse you have COVID, the more likely you are to get like long COVID or post-COVID syndrome. So about 8% of people who get COVID is obviously higher in like older people, but about 8% of everyone who gets COVID needs to be put on a ventilator. And being on a ventilator is absolutely terrible. It wrecks your body and you will be weak for months and months and months after that. You won't be able to like do any high intensity exercise. So I think what people don't consider when saying that, oh, 99.9% of people survive is that a much larger percentage than 0.1% are going to have long-term effects if they don't get the vaccine.
Okay. So we got another question in from Christian. And his question is, will anybody ever be fully vaccinated? This question comes to mind because some countries have said that you need fully vaccinated status, and that includes the booster shot. So is this going to be a thing where you have to get a booster every year, quote, get a booster every year, or is it this one and then you're done? Eric.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't see the United States doing that anytime soon. I also haven't seen any specific research about like how effective the booster is compared to like non-booster like vaccines, so like 2 shots versus 3 shots. So I'm gonna wait for something like that to come out before I have any strong opinions. But I do think that is a concern of like constantly raising the bar, but I don't think it will be anything like outrageous requirements.
Okay. I like that. So now we're gonna open it up a little bit.
Oh, you didn't ask me, or was I supposed to answer?
Well, if you'd like to answer, you can.
All right. Okay.
I apologize. I thought you were just. Never
That's
mind.
okay. You're good. You're good. But I would say, like, I agree with Eric though. I really don't even know if we're gonna ever be fully vaccinated, if we're required to get a booster every year. Obviously, I mean, I have no plans of getting the booster. This is obviously something I consulted with my doctor with, and we made the decision that getting the booster is not the right decision for me to go in. And if a booster, obviously, there are people who have gotten boosters already, and obviously, if you want to get a booster, you can go ahead and get one. But if you don't want to get it, then you don't have to get it. It's all of your personal medical choices.
I think just to add on to that, I think that getting the first series, the first 2 shots are much more important than getting a booster.
Okay. So now we're going to open it up a little bit. I'm sure you two have done a bunch of research and you have pillars that we haven't been able to speak about yet. So we're going to let Anthony start and give us something and then let you two play off of each other. Don't like take 10 minutes at a time and let each other speak. Don't interrupt each other.
All right. So, like I said, most of my stance tonight was all about freedom and liberty and how you basically have the right to make your own personal medical decisions. Well, I'm just going to read something from a quote that President Joe Biden said earlier this year, and he said that it's not about your freedoms. It's not about your freedom or your personal choice. It's about protecting those around you. End quote. Now, obviously, if you live in America, you know that everything is about freedom and liberty. But our founding fathers predicted that this tyranny that we're living in would come, and that's why I also mentioned before about the quote I mentioned before about Benjamin Franklin, and he said that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little more safety deserve neither liberty or safety. And obviously, but saying obviously what Arnold Schwarzenegger, what he said earlier in my opening remarks, saying screw your freedom. Like who in America would ever say that? Obviously, either probably a tyrant would, probably a dictator would, but freedom and liberty just make the United States great. And honestly, safety Americans, obviously, safety is a top priority for all Americans because that's the government's job to protect the people. But and Ronald Reagan said this too, and I quote him that government's job is to protect the people, not run their lives. So when the government is telling you to run your lives, telling them, "Oh, get this vaccine," or you can't go, excuse me, out of your home You can't go out of your home for until you get the vaccine, or you have to be on Zoom calls until you get your second booster. Um, Obviously, when people in government say stuff like that, it's, again, I use the term medical tyranny, because when we have these medical tyrants in government, and it's one of the reasons why politics in America is broken. Like, freedom, liberty, prosperity should always be the number one priority of everyone in government. Keeping our country free is the number one thing that we should keep in mind.
Eric?
So they go off that.
Yeah, I just want to get off each other.
Yeah. The government hasn't done any of that. The government has never said you can't leave your house unless you have the second booster and you have to work on Zoom. It's everything about that is like based on like your job for the most part, which I think, as I said, is perfectly fine. But I do think there is some merit to saying that the government having that much power is questionable, but the government hasn't done any of that yet. So just to emphasize again, I think it's important to take into account the freedom to not live in a pandemic as opposed to the freedom to make dumb medical decisions. Like, you should be able to make dumb medical decisions if it's not going to affect me. But when it affects me, if there's overrun hospitals and someone has a heart attack and they can't get to the ICU because everyone's on a ventilator from COVID, that's going to affect me. That's a problem that I don't want to deal with. That's infringing on my freedoms to have decent health care.
Yeah. So this is where I disagree with you. Obviously, we have seen a lot of agreements in this debate, which I'm really proud of. But when you say that that people who are unvaccinated should get less treatment than vaccinated patients, again, that's also something that it's not right, because what happens if someone has a heart attack or a stroke and they can't get the proper treatment because they're unvaccinated, then they'll most likely die. And I've seen these happen across the country. But there's even worse than this, and this is what the big tech giants in Silicon Valley do. The Pfizer CEO, and I put this in in our chat inside the screen. He said that people who spread misinformation on COVID are criminals. Okay, now I'm not saying to spread misinformation online. I'm promoting that. And of course, it's wrong to spread falsehoods unknowingly. But the thing is that, what is COVID misinformation? Twitter actually banned the Newsmax White House correspondent for spreading COVID misinformation. And I talked about this on my show with Danny Irons on the Anthony Miragliotta show about what is COVID misinformation. Is it just the opinions that you believe in are COVID misinformation? Because people have gone banned on Twitter and social media because of this COVID misinformation going on. Because you're allowed to have different opinions on COVID, and that you can think, oh yeah, the government is overreaching by a lot, because that is the reason why 2020 was so terrible, because of big government overreach. Think of it. Big Anthony Fauci said BLM riots don't spread COVID, but sitting at a desk, sitting at a table in a pizza parlor, that somehow spreads COVID. It's just a flip flopping. It's the consistency that really bothers me. And when I've seen a lot of this, it really questions my reliability in the CDC and the NIH. And I'll go back to what I said before, but I get back to Eric when he said that the CDC and the NIH should be abolished. So, and he said they should be abolished because they have too much power. And I will just quote what he said here, is that this: the great Chief Justice John Marshall, an advocate of a strong federal government, summarized the Constitution's position on health care in his famous decision in Gibbons versus Ogden in 1824. Reserved exclusively for states, he wrote, "Our health laws of every description." Nevertheless, enabled by the rogue Supreme Court rulings issued in panic arguments during the Great Depression, Congress continues to fund both the CDC and the NIH. But what's the reasoning? Obviously radical, yes. Necessary, absolutely. But history tells us why. Obviously, because the CDC and the NIH are not government entities. They just give advice, and then Congress takes their advice on what to do. So it's all the advice that the CDC and the NIH have given. They were all just guidelines. They weren't laws. So technically, did we all have to follow them? No, but they were guidelines. So so it is guidelines to help us keep us, healthy. But the problem now is that since they've become so politicized and so drunk with power, it's extremely concerning.
Yeah, so just to touch on that, I think that the issue of like social media companies censoring different COVID information is very questionable, and there's like that's like a whole different debate we could do. Because on one hand, like if it's like true like misinformation that's harming people, you could make an argument to get rid of that. But like, what are they going to do with like the power to do that in the future? So again, I think that's something that we should be very careful about that precedent that we're setting. Um, to go on your point about misinformation from COVID, I think what the Pfizer, I never read the quote, but I think what the Pfizer CEO was trying to say was that people who were spreading like purposeful misinformation, saying like not to get the vaccine for any reason or whatever, I think that what he's saying is that those people are literally killing people by telling them not to get the vaccine, which is making them criminals.
Okay. So I would just want to just close with this. Um, Obviously, in this country, the United States, the freest country on the face of the earth, you have a decision to make. Whatever decision you want to go, you get to decide when when you want to, okay, well, from the I wouldn't say not all the time to go to work, but you have the freedom to choose what career path you want. You choose what kind of job you want. And obviously, you have the decision whether to get a vaccine that you don't want or want. And obviously, again, I'm not your doctor, so I can't make this decision for you. Again, I got the vaccine, and I encourage people to get the vaccine. But at the end of the day, it's your choice whether you want to get the vaccine or not. Obviously, what this pandemic has taught me is that um, that people once the government gets power and once they take away our liberties, it's very rare for our freedoms to ever be given back to us, and that's why we have to fight for our freedoms every single day. And I'll quote Reagan again because you can never go wrong with the Reagan quote: "Is if we ever lose freedom in America, there's nowhere else we can go. This is the last stand on earth." And think of that quote very um, deeply because if we ever lose freedom in America, there will never be another free country in the world. Where else are we going to go to? Cuba? Cuba's communist. North Korea's communist. China's communist. Like, there is no other country we can go to, and that's why we have to fight, fight, fight. And if you're not involved, I encourage you to get involved. Fight against the medical tyranny, or we won't ever have a country again.
All right, I'll just give a little closing statement. So basically, my argument boils down to the government hasn't made anyone get vaccinated. It's all coming from like private businesses saying that like you either need to be vaccinated to enter here or saying they won't hire people who aren't vaccinated. You still have the choice, and you should weigh the pros and the cons. And the pros of the vaccine are that it's safe and effective, and the cons are I don't know why people still don't want to get it, but they still don't want to get it. I think 99.9% of people should get it because the vaccine does what it's intended to. It prevents severe COVID, and it has very minimal side effects, way less side effects compared to actual COVID.
Well, y'all heard both sides. I think we had a great debate from the boys tonight. Very respectful. I love how we will get questions and some back and forth in. I think we did a great job, and I just want to give a round of applause for you guys. It was fun moderating for you.
Yeah, thanks, Sean, for moderating. You did a great job. I think you learned a lot from me.
Thanks, Sean. Go Giants.
Go Giants.
Go Giants tonight.